Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. In 1962, Shirley Jackson released what would be her final novel, We Always Lived in the Castle, the story of two sisters and their uncle ostracized from their small town and holed up in a grand Gothic home in Vermont. The new film by Stacey Passon faithfully adapts the story with pitch-perfect performances from her cast. Let's take a look.
My name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. The Blackwoods have always lived in this house. And we will never leave here, no matter what they say or what they do to us. Never. Father built this gate to keep us safe, but it could not protect him.
My mom says you and Constance eat rats. Only witch.
People here believe Constance killed Father.
One of the true, genuine mysteries of our time.
There is such a thing as good taste.
Have you ever tasted arsenic?
What are you doing? I heard Father in his room. I feel him coming back.
Meerkat. It's our cousin, Charles Blackwood. He looks just like Father.
Has he said anything about leaving?
He's our cousin, and he will go when he's ready.
His presence is a strange new spell.
We have many plans to make.
That chair is my dead brother's chair.
I'm going to put death in all their food and watch them die.
He was a very wicked man, our father.
The world is full of terrible people.
From We Have Always Lived in the Castle, please welcome Taissa Farmiga and the great Crispin Glover. Let's hear it. Hey. Thank you so much for being here. I said in the intro, pitch perfect performances, and I know that it's my job to say nice things to you because you're here on this stage, but I really do mean that because this is a really tough, tricky place, I think, for performers in the sense that it is a Gothic novel that is being adapted, and it requires you to be somewhat exaggerated is not the right word, but it's a heightened kind of performance that I feel like you have to give, while at the same time you have to still be grounded enough for people to believe in the story. Did the two of you feel that way when you were doing it?
I mean, for me, it wasn't, I didn't really think about the heightened sense of it all. Meerkat is a very unusual young woman, and she feels a lot of things. And I think to be true to the moment and keep that groundedness that you were talking about, you just have to be in the moment. You just have to believe what she's believing. So I'm not, personally, for me as an actress, I think that responsibility fell more on like the producers and the director itself about, making sure everything feels like it's all existing in the same sort of reality. Yeah. For me, it's just being true to who I thought Meerkat was.
But the script and the director generally are doing that heightened work for you, so you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the way you move the camera, I think the way you light a scene, I think the way the shot is set up really affects that heightened sense. Yeah. And Crispin, what about you? I have this feeling that you were familiar with this book beforehand. No?
No. I read it while we were shooting.
Oh, wow.
But it was evident when I got the script that it was excellent material.
It feels to me like based off of the movies of yours that you've made that I've seen and other work that you've been a part of, that this is kind of in your wheelhouse to a degree. I could be incorrect.
Well, I really like the material. I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily similar to my own material that I've worked in for my own films that I've directed, but I do very much like this material, yeah.
So what was it like when you first got the script?
It was just immediately apparent, without even having read much of it, that this was good material. Like I keep saying, I could tell it was literarily based, and often when something's based on a book, there's depth to it just because it's been thought about quite a bit. And something I appreciate about the film is I do feel like the depth that's in the novel, there is depth in the film, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, but also like I think you're right. When someone is adapting from a book has existed for so long. There's such rich material there to pull from often that when you're deciding what scenes to take from a book, you also have this sort of huge background of information that both the actors and the filmmakers can go off of.
Yes.
Sure. What drew you to playing Meerkat?
I mean, similar to Crispin, I had not read the book prior to getting the script. I read the script. I fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the tone of it, this almost contradiction of living in a world that's twisted and foreboding, yet there's this almost like fairy tale glaze over it. I loved that. I loved Meerkat. I loved how she seemed like in one moment she could be just an innocent child, the next she's infinitely aware and intelligent. I love that she didn't make sense, and I wanted to understand. So that's what I was drawn to it. And then once I read the book, again, there's so much material and there's so much information, just like in the inner monologues and dialogues from Meerkat that Shirley Jackson had already written. So it was almost like I had a cheat sheet for the character because, I got to actually dive into her mind and see who she is through the book.
So much of the movie is a three-hander and then like a four-hander, if you will, when Sebastian Stan joins. And it's all of it, or a large amount of it, is in the three of you in this one location, in this house. What was it like shooting together? Did you find, due to having less of you and all these scenes in one place, you had more time to really work on it and develop the scenes?
I feel like we never really overworked anything. We did on Sundays. We would drive out to the house, and there would be like 4 to 6 hour rehearsals of just sort of like,
which is actually pretty unusual in film.
For sure.
Yeah,
That sounds even kind of like a luxury now. Most people that I talk to who make small films or independent films are like, we showed up, said it, shook hands, and then did our crying scene together.
well, and usually there's, I think, on location work, you have 2 days off and 5 days of shooting. Mm-hmm. So Sunday was our second day off, but we were all happy to do it. It was good that we did.
Yeah, no, of course, and I think it was really good because we worked on. I don't think we ever overworked the actual scene and like the meanings of the scene. We really went through. We spent those hours going through the scenes for the week and figuring out direction and more of like staging and stuff like that. So on the day we had time to delve into, the emotions and the deeper stuff, the stuff that mattered when you wanted to capture it on camera.
But that's even cool that Stacey, the director, was allowing you in some ways to dictate how she was going to then end up shooting it. It sounds like it doesn't sound like.
Well, I mean, she was, the director Stacey, she was there. Like I think DP was there, Stacey was there, producer was there, and us actors. And it's just sort of, we're all just trying to.
She wanted. It was Stacey that wanted to do those.
Right,
rehearsals.
she started it. Yeah.
But that's different than like having a rehearsal where then she sees what you're doing and then says, "Oh, now I have an idea as to how to shoot this." Is different than you guys showing up and her being like, "You're going to go right here. You're going to say this line, and then you're going to walk out of the frame that I've set up."
Well, usually the way it works these days is you go and do a blocking rehearsal without anybody around, ideally, except the director and the actors. Then they call in the key people or the entire crew to watch it, and then the lights are set up. That's usually about as much rehearsal as there is.
Yeah. So in this case, we just did all of those blocking rehearsals. We just did it one time at the beginning of the week on Sunday.
So you could basically get there the next day and.
Yeah, so we already knew the blocking, so we didn't have to go to set until we were fully ready in hair and makeup, and that just saved us time and gave us more opportunity to get more takes and be able to feel out the characters more.
Yeah, you have more time in the rehearsal that way. Yeah.
So much of this movie is about like a small town herd mentality and the assumptions that you make about other people and ostracizing them based off of those assumptions. What attracted you to that kind of material?
I mean, honestly, I was drawn to Meerkat and Constance's relationship. That herd mentality is so interesting, especially in this day and age with social media and how it's so easy to jump onto someone else's idea so quickly, and then like that becomes what's like that's the word, that's what's written, that's what it has to be.
Well, they all believe that someone is guilty, and therefore have essentially ostracized the family as whoever is still living there as all kind of guilty based off of that.
For sure, but I mean, for me, that's that's not why I did the project. It was it's another aspect to it that I find interesting now, especially looking back on it. But yeah, for me, it was more about the personal relationships between the family members.
What was it like for you working with Alexandra, who's your sister and you're basically your closest relationship in the film?
Yeah, probably the only person she actually truly cares about, the only thing she really cares about. I adore Alex. I live like 2 streets down from Alex right now in Los Angeles. I see her all the time. We take dogs on a walk, so that relationship has definitely continued. I think our relationship in real life is a little bit more... I mean, it's not as controversial as Meerkat and Constance is what they get up to. That sounds weird. We're not talking about...
I would hope not.
Cool. No, I absolutely...
Did you discover that you lived to...
We'd both moved since we filmed that movie. She happened to buy a house, and then my boyfriend and I moved, and we started renting a house. So it just happened to be that she lives 2 streets down. But yeah, in the beginning, we got the job. We sat down for lunch. Constance is supposed to be this incredible chef. So Alex was telling me how she was potentially going to be taking cooking classes as research. I love to cook. I got super jealous. I was like, oh, that's cool. I wish I could take cooking classes. So she invited me along, and we went and did a cooking class together. And then all of a sudden, we had a relationship.
Crispin, I feel like you've been known since the beginning of your career as this guy who does performances that nobody will ever forget. Anytime you are on screen, it's like, oh, that is a Crispin Glover performance, and it almost becomes iconic. I think back to River's Edge, or even, one of your first films, At Close Range, which is just like, when you come on screen, it was like, who is this guy? And this is incredible. And it's sort of always been that way for you. What was it like being confined to a wheelchair in this movie and have to sort of bring that performance into a wheelchair?
I did another film. In fact, I think we had an interview for it for
Bagman?
The Bagman.
Yeah.
I was in a wheelchair in that film as well. But I mean, there was something to it, but that wasn't the main thing that I was thinking about. Physicality, of course, is important, can be important, but also whatever's going on in the head, the psychology, the subtext, that can be the most important. So not necessarily about physicality is always an important part no matter what, whether you're in a wheelchair or not. But it wasn't what my primary thought was.
What is your approach to a role prior to shooting it? You get the script, and then from there, how do you bring ideas to the set, and how do you think about the character, and what's your process kind of like?
Every single time it's just different. There were different things that happened on this because the script had changed. I had gotten one draft of the script, and I was very set on an archetype that I had not been offered before, the archetype being a mentor character. I often play and get offered what I would call the personification of the antagonism, or an antagonistic character. And it was something I was drawn to when I first read it, that I'd never played a mentor. And when I'm saying mentor, I'm talking about Joseph Campbell wrote a book in 1948 called Hero with a Thousand Faces. He coined the term hero's journey story structure. So I was aware of that, but the script had changed a little bit, and it started to become more of an antagonistic character. So Stacy recommended I look at the original book, which I did, and then we bought more of what happened to be in the original book, which was more of the mentor character. So the things evolved, and I'm pleased with how it all came out. But every film is different. You never know what is going to happen or what you're going to work on.
So you and Stacey, so basically you read the script and then you were talking to Stacey, and then the two of you developed the character a little bit more together based off of the book?
Yes, it was complicated, but it essentially, yes. It worked out well.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't happen often, though, that directors are willing to kind of go that
I
length.
think it's the ideal. The ideal is that you have everybody's wanting to make the best film possible. You have a conversation, things evolve, and it gets better. That's the ideal.
Did you find that with Meerkat as well?
What, the like collaborating with Stacey?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Stacey wanted to tell Shirley Jackson's story. So she was very much open to making that a reality in the sense of like, if I read the book and I had a different take on a specific moment, I could talk to her about it and we could sort of massage it and make it work for what we both felt was closest to the book. You know, at times it's going to be difficult it's always hard to translate, you know, written word on a page sometimes to a screen, and you have to make some adaptations and changes. But for the most part, yes, Stacey was very, very collaborative, and that's what I loved from the beginning of. We had so many Skype sessions prior to us getting to Ireland of just talking through Meerkat and Meerkat and Constance's relationship, which is nice because I felt like before I even got to set, I feel like I had such a close relationship with Stacey. We had a shorthand about Meerkat, so that makes it incredibly easy on set.
Crispin said that's the ideal. Do you find that is a consistency with projects that you're on, that you get the ideal like that?
I don't find that it's a consistency. I think I've personally been very lucky to be able to work with a lot of collaborative people who want to make the best project, and they're open to, you know, hearing other people's opinions to make that happen. Because, you know, a lot of people be like, okay, I know it's right, no, it's perfect, but sometimes you don't.
Well, I know you said that when you were younger, when you got your first project in your sister's film, you said basically that you had no interest in acting prior to that and being on screen. Do you think that lends to you're not getting lucky with projects, you're only looking for projects that are going to end up being both collaborative and an enjoyable experience for you rather than just getting on screen?
That's interesting. I'd never thought of that. Yes, it's true. I never really had aspirations to be an actress until that door was open for me, and then I started chasing it. Perhaps, you know, a lot of times you audition and you get the majority of times you audition, you get the job off an audition, and sometimes you get to just sit down and have a conversation with the director or the writer-director or the writer. And those are the projects I really, really love, which is what happened with this for me on Castle, is that I just got to sit down with Stacey and just talk about it. And that's when you get to feel somebody out. That's when you get to figure out if you can work with this person, if your minds can collaborate, and also you get to see if that person is willing to, not give up control, but just be willing to, I don't know, just make the best version of what we have.
You know, Crispin, oftentimes I talk to actors, I think from your era, who are your age and in the 80s, and they talk about that period of time when they were young acting as they were into acting in a different way, and they felt like they had to commit in a way that was almost unhealthy. And then when they got older, they realized they could sort of approach a role as almost like a working actor would and figure it out, and it would be a little bit healthier for them. I think back to your role in River's Edge, which I think I've already referenced once, but it's such an incredible performance and it'll live on forever. But do you approach your performances in a completely different way now as an older actor than you did when you were 19 or 20 when you made that movie?
Yeah, I was, I think I was 21, but sure. I mean, every single performance is going to be different. Probably at that time, I was really, and I can't say that this is necessarily better or worse, just different. But at that time, with that script in particular, I was very specific when I read it, how I was going to interpret it. And every take, I would essentially try to hone in on what I was meaning to accomplish. Nowadays, and part of it has to do with editing on my own films, I tend toward, it was something Stacey was very good at, was she liked to get variations of takes. She would give different conditions, which a lot of directors don't do. She was good with that. But I tend toward liking to do that as well, because really editing, in the editing room is where things can really become varied and have depth if the right choices are made in the editing room. So if you've got a lot of variation, they can make your performance better. But there is something to be said for having a very specific performance that you want to do, and you go for that. But people, I have found, generally like it better if you give more variations. And it probably is better for the editing.
Would you say becoming a filmmaker yourself changed the way that you act and changed your perception of acting, or as an actor?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and also it shifted in my head when it was in the year 2000, I switched how I chose to act in films was essentially to fund my own filmmaking, which meant that instead of acting being my art, filmmaking became my art, and I switched acting to be a craft, which it sounds funny, but it's a different way of thinking about it, where probably earlier on it was like it would drive me crazy if anything was wrong at all. I still tend toward being like that, but I was more like that then, and I'm a little easier. But I can still, I mean, even on this film, there were things I really wanted that we would have strong discussions about. But again, it worked out nicely.
So it must be nice, though, when you get to do something that gets to be both art and part of your craft, a movie like this.
Absolutely, and that does happen. Yeah, this is a good example. I'm proud of this film.
I think we have some time for questions in the audience. Who has a question? Someone's walking up.
Hi. So I was just curious about going into a film where you're playing these peculiar but purposely driven characters, and a film that's already so stylized. Where do you look to emotionally ground your performance?
I mean, for me, the focus is just it has to feel real to me. Like I can't act something if I feel like I'm just putting on a performance. Do you know what I mean? Like the character has to feel real to me. So to ground it in that, it's just grounding it in it has to be real. It has to feel authentic to me. I'm not trying to play someone peculiar. You know, I'm playing someone who the way they absorb information, the way they express themselves is peculiar. You know?
For me, it's even still just from basic acting training of going after what the character wants. They call it the intention. Whatever the character is wanting, and then how that particular character gets it. One person might get something a different way than another person would get it. But if you're focused on what you need to get, then you're not really thinking necessarily about so-called stylization. But the character might have impositions of how they get that thing. Okay.
One more.
Hi. This is a question from BuildSeries.com. Someone's asking, was it difficult for you guys to get out of the characters since the setting of the show is so dramatic?
Say the last part again?
Was it difficult for you guys to get out of the characters because the setting of the show is so dramatic and scary?
Because the setting of the show is dramatic and scary?
Yeah.
I don't have trouble with getting out of the character.
Usually I don't. I'm a very happy person. I'm a very light person. The characters I play tend to be slightly opposite of that. So,
Why do you think that is?
Because you need drama in your life somewhere. No, I don't know. I feel like it's always been a good way for me to discover myself and discover parts of my personality through playing these different characters. And I just tend to, in my work life, I like to dive into things that are deeper in it. And it takes like I don't know, it takes more effort to find that sort of level of emotion. But normally it doesn't, I hop in and out of it just because I can't sit in that for long.
Are you also the type of person who reads and watches more extreme or dramatic work than your personality necessarily indicates?
No, I like to watch comedies. I love to act in the dark stuff and heavy stuff, and I love dramas. But if I sit down to watch TV, I want something light. I want something easy. It's hard for me to it's hard for me to sit. I'm really empathetic. So when I sit with a show, and if it's something that I'm watching that's heavy, I absorb it. But if I get to express that, like in acting, it's going outwards, it's going away from me. But if I'm sitting and I'm watching something that's super dramatic and heavy, I absorb it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So
you have trouble, you can let go of the characters when you walk off set, but you can't let go of dramatic movies that you watch in your personal life.
Well, like when the movie ends, sure, it'll sit with me for a bit, but it's in the moment. It's like the weight of it just sits on me. I need to learn to not absorb people's emotions, I guess. I think I need to go to therapy.
Congratulations on the film, you guys. I loved it. It's incredibly beautifully. It's beautifully made. Wonderful performances. It comes out May 17th for people to see. Everybody give a huge round of applause for Crispin and Taissa. Let's hear it.